Thank you for joining us at Getting Started with data.census.gov in the classroom. This webinar is geared towards the novice student and educator on basic background on census data and finding that data on the Census Bureau's dissemination platform, data.census.gov.
So we're going to start with an overview of census data. Again, we're going to be looking at the American Community Survey, the ACS, and then County Business Patterns, or CBP. And then we're going to do a live demo. We're going to look at finding some of that ACS data and then actually using the tools that we have in data.census.gov to visualize some of the county business patterns data. And then last, we'll hit on some resources that we have available if you have any questions or need some help with using the site. All right, so first let's start with that overview of the census data. So the U.S. Census Bureau, we're the largest statistical agency in the federal government. We conduct more than 100 censuses and surveys each year. I think many of us are familiar with the decennial census that occurs, every 10 years. And then we have the American Community Survey. We have the economic census, which is every 5 years. And then we have so many other census or surveys that cover quite a wide range of topics. And our mission is to serve as the nation's leading provider of quality data about its people and its economy. So let's take a little closer look at some of these main sources of census data. So I touched on the decennial census, that's conducted every 10 years. And then the economic census is done a little more frequently, it's every 5 years. We have demographic surveys that are conducted annually. The big ones that people are familiar with are the American Community Survey, the Current Population Survey, and then our Survey of Income and Program Participation. And on the economic side of the house, we have all kinds of surveys that are conducted annually. These include the Annual Business Survey, the newer Annual Integrated Economic Survey, the Retail Trade Survey, the Survey of Public Employment and Payroll, commodity flows, and then that county business patterns that we mentioned. We also kind of divided it up between demographic and economic sides to kind of make it a little clearer as to what each of those is looking at. So when you're looking at the demographic data, you're looking at individuals, data on families, data on households, and then housing characteristics. The economic side, that looks at businesses, governments, also looks at housing, but that's more related to construction. So a little deeper dive on the American Community Survey. It's the premier source of detailed information about the nation's people in housing. Altogether, about 3.5 million addresses are used to collect the data. It covers more than 40 topics. And one thing to keep in mind is that many of the questions that the American Community Survey collects data on, those were originally covered, collected via the decennial census that is done each decade. ACS data is released in 1 year and 5 year estimates. It officially started in 2005. So the first 1 year estimates that are available are for 2005, and then because the 5 year data is needed for the 5 years of data is needed for the 5 year estimates, the first time that's available is the 2009 5 year estimates that cover from 2005 to 2009. And then I wanted to look a little bit more closely at, oops, that was not supposed to do that. Okay, look a little more closely at the decennial census and the American Community Survey. So we're going to look at a little bit of census history to kind of understand what the ACS is and why it exists. So the first census of the U.S. was conducted in 1790, and then it's occurred every 10 years with one form being used to collect data for all the households through 1930. And so then from 1940 to 2000, the decennial census contained a short form that's used to collect data from all the households. And then you had a long form that was used to collect data from a sample of households. And so the long form approach worked well initially, but the data became less and less current, as the decade progresses after each decennial census. And so then in the early 1990s, a wide variety of users expressed the need for current, nationally consistent data. And so that led the federal government policymakers to consider the feasibility of collecting social, economic, and housing data continuously throughout the decade. So then in 2000, a large-scale demonstration of the American Community Survey was conducted. And so then after extensive testing, the ACS was fully implemented in 2005. And then it began collecting data each year. And there's also the Puerto Rico Community Survey. That's the equivalent of the ACS in Puerto Rico. And then in 2010 and moving forward, the decennial census sent that short form to all households. And then the ACS, that became the new point for collecting information each year using what was on the long form. And I did include a link, or we did include a link down here at the bottom if you wanted to learn more about the ACS. All right, so the content that's collected by the ACS, it can be grouped into 4 main types of characteristics. We have social, demographic, economic, and then housing. So social characteristics include topics like disability status, education, the language spoken at home. Demographic includes the typical sex, age, race, and Hispanic origin. Economic has commuting to work, employment status, income, and then housing has characteristics like computer and internet use, housing cost, and then vehicles available. That's another interesting topic. And so altogether, these topics are used to produce more than 1,000 tables for local communities each year. All right, so then along with the topics that are covered, the ACS also provides data for more geographies on an annual basis than any other household survey. This image here, it shows some of the geographies, just some of them, of what the ACS data is produced for, and then the relationship between them. So these lower geographic areas, they fit neatly within the larger areas directly connected by the lines. So for example, the school, congressional, and state legislative districts, they all fit neatly within states, and they don't cross any state boundaries. But they could cross boundaries of other types of geographies. They can cross the boundaries of counties or metropolitan areas. And so in this, you can also see the smallest geographic building block is the block group. Block groups are a group of blocks within a census tract. They usually have around like 600 to 3,000 people. And so the ACS's unique ability to report on a wide range of geographies is what gives it such a broad appeal. All right, and so when you're looking at the ACS, you also have to take into account the different types of tables that the ACS produces. The most tables that they have are detailed tables. These are available for all topics, for all geographies. They typically contain only number estimates and margins of error, number margins of error. You have subject tables. The table ID with that starts with an S. Sorry, let me go back. Detailed tables, those table IDs, they start with a B or a C. Subject tables start with an S. And these span information on a particular ACS subject, such as veterans, but typically the subject tables will give both number estimates and the percentage estimates. You have the data profiles. These are actually some of my favorite tables. They have a wide range of information, but they're all kind of focused on certain like umbrella topics. So, one focuses on social characteristics, one focuses on economic, there's another for housing, and then there's another for demographic. And these also tend to include both the percent, the number estimates, and the percent estimates. And then last, we have comparison profiles. These show estimates over time, and they include statistical significance on whether the change was statistically significant for that characteristic. They look very much like the data profile tables. All right, and so now we've kind of walked through ACS, so let's take a look at county business patterns. County Business Patterns is the annual survey, and it provides economic data by 2 through 6-digit NAICS industry codes, and it's for most businesses with paid employees. And it has data on the number of establishments, employment during the week of March 12th, first quarter payroll, and annual payroll. So when you're looking at the economic data, County Business Patterns uses this. You want to look at the North American Industry Classification System, or NAICS. And so this is the standard that's used by federal statistical agencies in classifying business establishments so that we can basically collect data, release data, and just have a nice standard for it. The NAICS use a hierarchical structure. So I have an example here. The 2-digit NAICS is the sector, 3-digit is the subsector, 4 is the industry group, 5 is the NAICS industry, and then 6 is the national industry. So as you drill down, you get into more and more detail. So the highest level, for example, is manufacturing, and then we can drill all the way down to the 6-digit NAICS, where we have chocolate and confectionery manufacturing from cacao beans. So it just drilling down in the NAICS, you get more and more and more detailed. All right, so let's take a look at the site. We're going to go ahead and do the live demo. So first, we're going to work on or look at finding some of the ACS data. Just kind of quickly go over what we'll do with this. We're going to look at the single search. We're also going to look at the filtered search. We'll look at selecting collections of geographies. Also, a popular functionality that we have, a feature in the site, is searching by address. And then we'll take a look at searching with maps. All right, so let's first look at the geographic profile and the ACS data profiles in Prince George's County, Maryland. All right, so we're at data.census.gov. This is our landing page that we have here. You can see we have the search bar here, and then we have some other buttons here that we're going to cover in a little bit. So I want to show you first the geographic profile for Prince George's County, Maryland. So when you're looking for the geographic profiles, all you really need to do is just enter the name of the geography. So I'm going to enter Prince, this out of the way. You can see some of this stuff is already coming up. George's, what am I spelling? And so there's only one Prince George's County, but if there were other similar geographies with the same name, they would show up here. So there's a couple different ways to get to the geo profiles. So the first is you can click on this little card here that comes up. If you wanted to just continue with your search, you could do that. And when you get to the All Results tab, once it comes up, there it is. You'll also have the ability to go to the geo profiles using this card that's over here on the right. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And so the geo profiles, they pull a lot of different data points from different sources. So it's not just ACS data or not just decennial data. It's pulling data points from a lot of different surveys, different programs. And so up here at the top, we have a little blurb. You can see how big the county is. You can learn about the neighboring areas. Then we have some of the most frequently requested data points here at the top. And then if you wanted to drill down and find out a little more information, you can go down to the sections that we have below. There's a menu here of where you can drop down to it. So let's say that we wanted to look at families and living arrangements. If we click on that, sorry, it's moving a little slow today. There we go. You can see some more detailed data points. So for example, data on, the number of children who are 18 years, under 18 years of age, the average family size. There's all kinds of different topics. that are all related to families and living arrangements. If you wanted to dive even a little bit deeper, maybe you wanted to take a look at this household data by types of households, you have links to the table source that this data is coming from. So this one happens to be using table DPO2, which is from the American Community Survey. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And so we can take a look at one of these. These are one of the data profiles that I mentioned earlier. All right. And so this one did not, there it goes. So DPO2 looks at social characteristics. I had mentioned earlier that the data profile tables have a lot of different data points about, kind of under a certain topic. So social characteristics, we have data on households, the relationship to people in the households, marital status, fertility, grant, all kinds of interesting stuff. School enrollment, educational attainment, that's definitely a hot topic. And if you wanted to also, EPO5 is over here. We can take a quick look. And that has the demographic data. So there's 4 data profile tables, but this gives you, I think, a little bit of an idea of what exactly they're showing. All right, so now we've looked at using that single search bar. So now let's take a look at using the other primary way to search in the site, which is using that filtered search. And so for this, we're going to find demographic data for Laurel, Maryland. And we want to find it for Laurel, and then for the zip code in the area, zip code tabulation area, that's there, it's 20707. For anyone who's used the site before, we have made a couple changes lately. One of them is getting back to the landing page. You used to be able to click on this logo here, the US Census Bureau logo. But we did change that recently. So now if you click on that, it goes to our main census.gov site. So if you want to just stay on data.census.gov, but you want to get back to that landing page, you can click here on this data.census.gov link that's up here in the upper right corner. And that'll take you back to the landing page. It'll clear out your search and you can start over. So for this, again, we're looking for information for data on Laurel, Maryland, and then 20707. So to get to the filtered search, underneath of the search bar, there's a button here that's called Explore Filters. And so if you just click on that, you'll get a panel over here on the left where you can select all types of different filters. We have them for geographies, topics, surveys, years, and then codes. So I always like to select my geographies first because that has the most bearing on what else is available. So we're looking again for Laurel, Maryland. It's considered a place. Places are cities, towns, villages. So I'm going to click on place, and then we're looking in Maryland. And then we have, and you can scroll down the list if you wanted, but little shortcuts we have. You can select the letter over here that it begins with, or you can just do a search. And force a habit, I tend to use the search bar. So we're just looking for Laurel City. So you can see that I've added that here to my search. You can see the filtered chips here for it. So the other geography that we're looking at is something called a zip code tabulation area. And we can select that by clicking on this geography option for zip code tabulation area. And then again, we're looking for Maryland. And just to make life easier, I'm going to search for it here at the top. And I'm going to add that to the search. So let's say that we're looking for race and ethnicity data. We want to see what's available for that. So we can go down to the topics here, and there is a race and ethnicity filter. I will mention some of the topics that we have actually commuting to work is one of the most surprising ones. Is that's under employment. So some of the filters you may have to take a quick look and kind of see where they are. It might be a little unexpected, but race and ethnicity is pretty straightforward. We have a race and ethnicity filter here, and we can dive deeper into the different race and ethnicity groups if we wanted. But for this, I just want broad race and ethnicity, so I'm going to check the box for that. And then I see that I have all of my filters selected, so I'm good. I'm going to go ahead and hit the search button over here in the lower corner. And so we get back all of the tables that match the criteria that we've added. So all of these are both available for the Laurel and the ZICTA. And in addition, it's all about race and ethnicity. So let's take a look at, we'll use this B01001B from the ACS. You can see the source there. And that B lets us know that it is a detailed table. When we click on it, if we were to click on the source, we can also see that it is a detailed table. So that's another way to kind of see what you're using. All right, and so we can see that we have data here, demographic data for both Laurel and for that ZICTA that we wanted. One of the, I guess you can say the most frequent things that people want to do with the tables once they find them is to download it to Excel, download it in some way to use in another format. So we have this download button here. And so you have three options to choose from. If you use the Excel, it's basically going to give you an Excel version, but it looks exactly like it does here on the screen. You also have a CSV version, which looks similar to what you see on the screen, but it doesn't have that same formatting applied to it. It's just that, the CSV formatting. And then you have last the zip file, which is a flat machine readable file. One of the big perks of that one is that it includes the GUIDs. So that's something that people definitely want, especially if they're, using the data to put in a map, they're going to have to match on the GUIDs. All right, so our next example, we're going to take a look at selecting collections of geographies. We want to get data on veterans for all the census tracts that are in Manassas, Virginia. And so we'll go back. I'm going to again start a new search by clicking on this data.census.gov link. And I'm back on the landing page. I'm going to use the Explore filters to filter search again. So I'm going to click on that. And again, I want to use I want to select my geographies first. So we're looking for the census tracts in Manassas. Excuse me. So over here on the left, we want to click on census tract. And then we're looking in Virginia. So I'm going to go down the list, find Virginia. And here we have the option, if we wanted to look at census tracts by county, we could do that. If we wanted to select individual census tracts within a county, we could do that here. But we also have alternative ways of selecting geographies. And so to do that, there's this within other geographies button here at the top. If you click on that, you can see the other ways that you have of looking or collecting those geographies. So we're looking at Manassas, which is a city. So that's a place. So I'm going to click on that. And so now you can see I have a list of all the CDPs, towns, cities, villages, towns, everything that is in Virginia to look through. So I'm just going to put in Manassas to save some time. I want Manassas City, Virginia. And then I want all the census tracts that are either fully or partially within Manassas. And so what this means is that these census tracts are either fully contained within the city itself or some little part of it touches the city. That's what that fully partially means. All right, so we've added that. And so then I wanted to look at data for veterans. So I'm going to go down to the topics. And this one, you're going to have to look a little harder for it. It's under populations and people. And we have the veterans topic there. So I'm going to check the box for that. And then we can go ahead. I have everything that I need for this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit search. And now again, we have the tables back that match what we're looking for. Actually, you know what? Let's do one other. Let's say that we want to specifically look at the detailed tables. So you can use the survey filters down here. Now you notice we've already done the search, but you can still add additional filters. You don't have to start all over again. So underneath the surveys, we have American Community Survey. And then because of the type of geography that we're looking at, it's just 5-year estimates that are available. And so then I'm going to check the box for detailed tables. And so this is just going to limit the tables that we get back to the detailed tables. All right, so now we have those tables available. So let's say that, let's look at this one, B21003. So this one's looking at veteran status by educational attainment for the population 25 years and over. So you can see here we have data for all of the tracts that are either fully or partially within Manassas. So let's say that we wanted to map out an estimate on this table. In particular, let's look at veterans who are high school graduates. So let's say that we want to map this out. So from the table, there's 2 ways to get to the map. We can either use this maps button here at the top, or you can use the map button, excuse me, that's in the ribbon. So I'm going to use this one up here at the top, this tab. And you can see that's given us a map now of all the tracks here in Manassas. But it's not necessarily looking at what I wanted to look at, it's looking at the total. So if you want to change what you're looking at, what variable you're using in the map, you can click on this downward arrow here, and it gives you a list of, excuse me, a list of all of the, basically what's the lines of the table. And so we wanted to look at veterans and we wanted to look at the high school graduates. So I'm going to click on that. And you can see that the map updates, and we can tell that it's done so because it tells you it's high school graduates that are veterans. And so then we can see that data for each of these census tracts. Let's say that you wanted to add some additional tracts to this. And there's a couple ways you could do so. If you wanted to, you can just click on a track or excuse me, click on the geography and hit select, and that will add it to your search, or add it to the filters, I should say. If you wanted to do maybe a larger group of geographies, what you can do is use the select button. You have a few different ways to do so. We have the box, circle, or lasso. Box and circle just create that shape, and everything that touches that shape is included. The lasso lets you kind of free form select everything. So to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like, I'm just going to select it, and then I'm going to just kind of like create this line. And, you know, if you had, some geographies that were a little not quite easy to put in a box or put in a circle, this is probably the one to use. All right, and so now all those are selected. So once I'm done, you just want to hit the select button again, and that'll take you out of there. So then you can move the map around or do what you need to do again. The map does default to showing data for the most recent year that's available. So right now we're looking at 2024, but if you wanted to look at older data, you certainly can. This table happens to go back to 2010. So that's how far that's a quick way too to tell how old a table is, how far back it goes. We can take a look at some of these other buttons up here. One of my favorites is the base map. That sounds silly, but the base map button. Right now we're using the basic one, which isn't bad. You can see the roadways, it's fine. But I tend to like the detailed one better because it gives me a lot more information to work with. There's parts of the country that I'm not familiar with. So it's a little easier when I can see, regional parks, a little more clearly see roadways. All of those help play a part in determining where you are. And then last we have the none, which is just as bare bones as you can get. But definitely handy if you're not interested in all of the other background information on the map. If you wanted to change the, let me switch. I'm gonna go, excuse me. I'm gonna go back to the detailed one because I like that one. All right. If you wanted to add boundaries to see how they, align with the geographies you have in the map, you could do so. Let's say that we want to look at, I don't know, we can look at zip code tabulation areas, see how they align up. They have a purple boundary line with purple text. As you can see, each type of boundary is associated with a different color. And so you could add as many of them as you want on there. Just note, it might kind of get a little busy. If you want to change the color scheme in the map, you can do so using the colors button. If you wanted to change the breaks in the classes, you can use the classes button to do so. We have natural, quantile, equal interval, and then manual. A very useful feature we have is the identify button. If you click on that, let's say you wanted to find out, I don't know, the GeoID of one of these tracks. If we click on it, we can see, the general information, what SICTA it falls in, what the census tract is. We know it's in Manassas, so that's fine. We can see it's in Virginia and then what county it's in. But if you wanted to find, say, the GeoID of it, you can click on that arrow there, and that'll give you additional information. But the GeoID, again, tends to be something people are really, really interested in. And then once you're done, you can just click on the identify button and leave it. You also have the ability to download the geographic boundary lines in a GeoJSON format. We have notes on the maps. You can go back to the table using the table button. If you wanted to go to our charts, you could just use this chart button. You can print the map. What prints is whatever the map is currently on, whatever view that's on. It's moving a little slow. All right, let me just show you real quick. So now you have a nice PDF of the map. It does include also the notes, so you also have that additional information available. And then if you wanted to, you can share the map. We have not only to social media, but also a link if you wanted to share it with a colleague or somebody else. You could just copy it, even just save it for yourself. You can just copy it and then save it. All right, so then I mentioned earlier one of the features that people really wanted to see with the site was searching by address. So you can put your address in and get information back, particularly geographic information. A lot of people relied on this service, and so people were very happy when we added this to the site. So I'm going to use the Suitland the address for the Census Bureau to kind of show this to you. Let's go back to the site, and I'm going to start a new search. And so underneath the search bar, we've been using this Explore Filters button, but there's also the Search by Address button. And so that's what we're going to use. So when I open it, you can see there's places to add the address. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 4600 Silver Hill. Let's do it. We're looking at Suitland, Maryland. That is 20746. You don't have to have necessarily all the pieces of information to use it. Like, for example, I think if you don't have the zip code, that's fine as long as you have the important pieces. It should, for the most part, find the address you're looking for. All right, so I have that in. I'm going to go ahead and hit search. And so it returns this address card. So I can kind of see where this is in relation to the area. But I also, more importantly, have access now to all of these different types of geographic information. So, for example, if you need to know what census tract you live in, most people aren't going to know that. So this tells you exactly what census tract, what block group. There's other information you might not need, what, congressional district you're in. And so if you wanted to then use that to find data, excuse me, you can just click on it. So let's take a look at the census tract. So I added that. So now I can see data on that particular census tract that we're located in. And if I wanted to add other filters or do whatnot, whatever with it, I could. The last ACS example I wanted to talk about is searching with maps. And so for this, we're going to look at table B19013. This is a median household income table, and we wanted to look at it for a block group in Alexandria, Virginia. All right, so I'm going to use, let's start a new search. So earlier I used a single search to kind of show you how to find the geo profiles. You just put in the name of the geography, but another way that you can use, there's many ways to use a single search bar, but one of the ways that I tend to use the most often is looking for specific tables. So let's start using that to look for B19013. So I'm going to enter that in. I'm not going to select any of these type of heads. I'm just going to click enter, or you can use the magnifying glass button. So it brings up the table. So I'm going to click on that. So we can see that it's showing data for the United States, and that makes sense because we didn't select any geographies. We don't have anything like that selected yet. So I need to find the block group that I need, but I don't know what it is. And again, this is not common information. Most people aren't going to know it. So one of the ways that we can use, we're going to use the map to basically find out what this block group is. So one of the things to keep in mind is some geographies are only available for the ACS 5-year estimates. So just to kind of make things easier, I'm going to go ahead and switch to that. You can see that the table defaulted to the 2024 1-year estimates. I'm going to switch that over to the 5-year. All of these smaller geographies like census tracts, block groups, they're only available with the 5-year estimates. All right, so now that I've done that, also a helpful hint, especially if you're not super familiar with the area, I like to select the city or the town or whatever it may be itself, because then that kind of helps me establish where I am and what the boundaries are. So we're looking at a block group that's in Alexandria. So I'm going to go ahead and click on place and then go to Virginia. All right, and then Alexandria City. Close that panel up. And so now we can see that we have data for Alexandria, and that's great, but that's we're interested now, right now in the map. So I'm going to go to the map. Let's make a little, I moved a little too quick. There it goes. Okay. All right. So now I have a little better idea of where exactly it is that I'm looking. All right. So we have Alexandria in there. I also want to add, I'm looking at block groups, right? So I'm going to add the boundaries in. So let's do, I'm going to do both census tracts and block groups. So as I added those, you can see probably more noticeably with the red tracks. But if we zoom in a little bit, we can start to see the light pink for the block groups. So the area that I am particularly interested in, it includes Church Street. And let me zoom in a little bit. All right. So let's see where I am. So we're going to want to find Church Street. So Church Street's down here. Oh, you know what? Let me change. Let me do what I normally do. I'm going to also use the detailed one so I can kind of start to see things. Oh, now I can really see it. All right, so we can see Church Street is right here. So now I got to kind of figure out, okay, so what block group is it? What census tract is it? This one isn't too bad. The numbers are kind of close by, so I can kind of probably make a guess as to what it is. But I like to be a little more precise. I don't want to make guesses. So I'm going to click on this identify button. And actually, this is what I frequently use this button for. And then I'm going to click on Church Street. And so now, without a doubt, I can see what it is I'm looking at. So we're looking at block group 3, and the census tract is 2007.03. And that's, obviously in Alexandria. But now I've used the map to kind of sort out what that information was that I needed. So now if I want to add that block group 3 to my search, what we can do is go over to the filters, and then I'm going to click on block group, and then we're still looking at Virginia. All right, and so we should have, let's go back real quick. All right, so the county, anyway, so we need Alexandria City is actually county equivalent. So when we go over to select the block group, we're going to look at Virginia. All right, and so we can see that, am I missing it? Oh, I thought, that's right, it's down at the bottom. So county equivalents are down here at the bottom of the list. So you have the counties at the top and then the county equivalents down here. So you can see there's quite a few in Virginia. So we're going to click on Alexandria City. And then the census tract is 2007.03. And click on that. And then we have the different block groups that are in there. So let's do block group 3. All right. And so now we have all of those added. And so again, if we wanted to take a look, let's go back to the table. So what we'll see here is Alexandria is available with the 1 year. We're going to switch back to 5 year again. And that'll give us data for the block group and for Alexandria. So you can see that works out. Let's take a little bit of a look at the tables. So I've kind of been mentioning this or doing it without really specifically calling it out. But if you wanted to switch to a, sorry, things are going off. If you wanted to switch to a different product, you can do so using this drop-down menu right here. If you wanted to go back in time to a different version of the table, different year of the table, you can do that. We still have the notes button if you wanted to find out more information about the table. We have the download we talked about earlier. We have, I like this because it always comes in handy. We have the citations here that you can copy, which tell you exactly what you need for the tables. If you wanted to share the table, you can do so. Again, we have the links to social media and then the links to or the link that you could copy and save, bookmark it. We also have the ability using the API button. If you wanted to get the API query for the table for the geographies that you've done, you could do that. And then some of these other buttons, if you transpose the table and you're like, I don't really like how that looks, you can use the restore button to kind of get it back to its original format. And then some of these we've gone over before, so I won't cover them again. But hopefully that helps. This is a different way of using maps that I don't know that everybody really thinks about. So hopefully that was helpful. So we have a resources page, which is, you'll find every kind of thing you can imagine. We have video tutorials, we have written tutorials, we have links to our newsletter, to our workshops that the webinars that we hold. So I would really advise you check that out. A great wealth of information found there. We also have email updates. If you wanted to get updates about data.census.gov, what's happening with it, new releases that we're having, we do send out a newsletter every month. So that's also a great way to stay current. I mentioned we have workshops that we hold. These are 3-hour interactive training sessions. We have them on a variety of topics. So check those out. We have all, data.census.gov is covered, API is covered, and our microdata access tool. We also have a customer satisfaction survey happening right now. If you go to data.census.gov, we have a banner at the top, and you just click on there and go take that survey. Love to hear your feedback on it, what's working, what's not, what you'd like to see. And then here's our resource, our information for the resources page, but also if you have questions, you can email us at census.data@census.gov. And if you do want to do training, you can reach out to us at the email address provided. We do training regularly, so just let us know if you want tailored training for your group or organization.